do I answer a clueless question without sounding rude? How do I get out of a situation where someone asks me an invasive question about a subject I don't want to talk about and don't want to elaborate on? Join me in this video as we discuss how to handle this type of situation politely and elegantly. Hi, how are you? Welcome to the Etiquette and Protocol channel. I'm Juliana Santiago, co-founder of the Institute of Etiquette and Protocol, the Institute of Etiquette and Protocol, teacher and etiquette specialist. And today we're going to discuss a little more about how you should handle, how you should get out of situations where you're asked rude questions. When someone asks a completely clueless question about a topic you don't want to talk about something you don't feel comfortable with, what should you do? So, in this video, I'm going to present you with some ideas, some strategies for you to follow and handle these situations well, in a polite and elegant way. And sometimes the person won't even realize that you didn't want to continue with that topic. Sometimes they might notice, but using this strategy more assertively and consistently can help. All the strategies that I'm going to show you in this video. Sometimes people won't even notice that you don't want to talk about a certain topic when they ask you about it. This topic was actually suggested by a follower who watches the videos here on the channel and commented that she would like to see videos about this subject. How do you get out of awkward question situations? So, if you have any video suggestions for the channel about a topic or situation you would like to understand better, like how to handle it or how to behave, comment down below. The next video could be based on your suggestion, helping you out in some way. Okay? Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the Etiquette e Protocolo channel. It really helps a lot. Don't forget to subscribe and of course to follow me on social media at Etiquette@Protocolo. Follow me there. I'm on Instagram every day. There's always a question box and I can help you there too. So let's go, because I've prepared some strategies for us to follow. When someone asks you a question you don't want to answer, sometimes the person asks you something like, "Oh, aren't you going to get married?" "Wow, who did you vote for?" "Wow, does your husband or you make money at your jobs?" Do people ever ask how much you make? Several topics and subjects that can make you feel uncomfortable. There are some subjects that for the person it might feel natural to talk about that topic. Sometimes she doesn't really know that some subjects and some questions can actually be inappropriate. So the person ends up doing it. And this happens every day, especially at social events where we meet people at parties, receptions, and events. People feel more comfortable there to talk. And they end up asking you about things from your personal life that you don't want to share. That can happen in the workplace too, but in a way, it's a bit more delicate, right? It's a little more, it doesn't happen that often. So the first thing you should think about is to stay calm, okay? If someone asks you a question and catches you off guard, just breathe. You don't have to answer right away. Calm down, take a moment to think about what you're going to say. Because even your silence is often an answer to the person that you didn't feel very comfortable with that question. So yes, you can wait to answer. And stay calm, right? Try not to show, especially through facial expressions, that you got nervous. It's very hard for us not to show it because many times we suddenly change our facial expressions. And what about the other one? He doesn't often need to be a body language expert to understand that you didn't feel comfortable. You didn't feel well, right? Sometimes you glance sideways and your expression changes slightly. Sometimes if you're smiling, you'll get a little more serious and the other person will notice right away. Because we've been dealing with human behavior since we were little, so the practices of body language. Of course, some of them we can read more specifically, and for that, we need to be more of a specialist. But in our daily lives in general, when we're caught off guard, we end up reacting, and the other person will end up noticing. With that in mind, it's a good idea to try to control your facial expressions, not to be too expressive with negative expressions, right? Closing yourself off too much, like doing things that can also show the other person that you felt uncomfortable, okay? The question was out of line, even if the person meant no harm. Sometimes they ask out of habit. That's just how they are. Can they change and improve? Yes, they should. But we deal with people all the time in our daily lives. And it's natural that not everyone has knowledge, is interested in this topic, or realizes that what they're asking is an inappropriate question. Take a breath and stay calm. Another interesting point to consider. Another strategy is if there's a topic you don't like to talk about. What are the topics you don't feel comfortable with? For example, money. When someone asks, for example, how much you earn or how long you've been working, if you don't feel comfortable talking about topics related to your work, it's a good idea to look for ways to get out of that situation. You can even come up with ready-made answers so that if you're questioned, you know how to respond, right? You already have that answer ready to go, and it ends up sounding more natural. When it takes us a little while to think about it, of course, it creates a pause, right? And then, when you answer faster, everything flows more smoothly in the conversation. So, thinking about topics that already make you uncomfortable and how you should get out of that kind of topic is interesting, an excellent strategy. And self-knowledge too. You notice topics that trigger you, that don't make you feel very well, that make you completely uncomfortable, and also make you sad. You know that many times the question the person asks is just clueless. But it can create a bad atmosphere in the environment you're in. So it's a good idea for you to think about these topics, these subjects, and how you should get out of them, okay? With answers prepared in advance. And self-knowledge as well to be aware of these topics. If you know which topics make you uncomfortable, you don't talk about them, and you also don't continue conversations about those topics. Another great strategy for getting out of clueless questions like that is to use humor. Using humor is an excellent tool. In fact, it's one of my favorites. I think with humor, we end up turning it into a joke, making the situation lighter, and then the person realizes that you're not going to engage with that topic. It's like shutting them down, but in a more humorous way. I really like it. For example, someone asks you, "Wow, Maria, aren't you going to get married yet?" "Wow, you still don't have a boyfriend?" Sometimes there are those uncles, those clueless relatives who end up asking questions, sometimes at weddings, Christmas, family parties, Mother's Day, when everyone gets together. Then they go and ask you that. In this case, you just look at the person and say, "Wow, I'm still waiting for the prince on the white horse to show up at my house. He hasn't shown up yet, but when he does, I'll let you know." There you go, it's over. You made a joke, you took it lightly and ended the subject. So if the person keeps questioning, I don't think she will, but if she does, you keep that humorous tone. Then you ask about a new subject, bring up a new topic of conversation, or even distract and go talk to other people there. Because you've already noticed that it's out of line. The questions and topics in that group conversation are going to be out of line. Another effective way to handle inappropriate questions. If you're not someone who likes to take things to the humorous side, you can answer in a more generic way. Sometimes you have a more serious personality. You're not someone who likes to joke around much. That's just not really part of who you are. And trying to be funny in that situation can sound a bit forced, a bit rehearsed, not so natural. One idea is to respond in a more vague way. For example, someone asks a question related to salary or money, for instance. "Wow, how much do you make for each product you sell?" "Wow, does your job pay you a good salary? With this job, can you make a living from it?" Well, a vague answer you can give without getting into it too much is to say, "Wow, let me tell you one thing. I'm very satisfied with my job and I love what I do. And for me, that's the most important thing." You answered, but you didn't really answer. You kind of changed the subject. And again, you already introduce a new topic. You ask the person another question. You look for another subject to talk about. All of this is to make it easier and to make your question go unnoticed. So giving a vague answer is really good. For example, someone asks, "Have you ever considered getting a boyfriend?" "I've thought about it." "I've thought about it." It's a vague answer. Someone asks, "Have you thought about losing weight?" I've thought about it. I don't think it's the right time. There you go, and then you can ask a vague question with a touch of humor too, which works really well when you combine the two. So it's hard for us to try to stay elegant and polite in these situations. It's like cutting the person off too, right? Someone excitedly asks about a topic you want to avoid, so you cut them off, but that's just how it goes. You need to know how to handle that situation. And there are questions that are really totally out of line, like when someone asks how much you make. So it's important for us to know how to handle this situation and not think that we're the ones in the wrong, okay? The other person also made a mistake by asking that question. They made a mistake by asking such an out-of-line question. So you're just there in a way, also getting out of that situation, always trying to get out in the best way, in the most positive way possible. But of course, it's a situation where, at first, when you start answering questions in a more vague way, or with a touch of humor, it's just to end the subject. In the beginning, you're going to feel uncomfortable, right? You're going to feel uncomfortable because sometimes that's not really part of your communication habits. But we're always trying to improve, right? Through these videos. We're here to talk more about behavior, to talk more about etiquette, and to better understand how to handle any situation. Because is that what etiquette tells us? Etiquette gives us great guidance so we can get out of any situation. And that's no different when it comes to awkward situations and crazy questions people ask. Another strategy is to be honest and say that you don't want to talk about that subject. Sometimes someone might ask you about a sensitive topic, for example. Oh, do you ever consider having children even if you don't want kids? If you don't want to discuss it, that's fine. Because it's not really an interesting topic for you to wonder if someone plans to have children. I don't recommend it. Especially if it's a married couple and you know they've been married for a long time. Why would you ask that kind of question? If you're in that situation and someone asks, a good answer is, I don't want to talk about that. That's a topic I don't like to talk about. So how are things going? Then just change the subject as well. So answering honestly is also essential for us to be able to cut off the subject. For example, you're a widower and someone asks you, do you plan to get married again? Are you a widower or a widow? You can answer, wow, I haven't even thought about that. I don't even want to talk about it. Because then the person will realize they were being rude and you'll handle it well by immediately changing the subject. I've talked a lot here about the strategy of starting another topic right away. When you give an answer but immediately switch to another topic, that's also an excellent strategy for getting out of the question. Have you ever thought about that? For example, someone is going to ask your age, and you're not someone who likes to talk about your age. Asking about age is generally inappropriate, but some discuss it openly while others prefer not to. How old am I? You might say, interesting question, then ask, how was your weekend? This is a combination of everything we've been talking about here in this video, which is a kind of vague question, very interesting. But you didn't even answer. It's a touch of humor because you already say, so how is it? It was your weekend, but tell me, how was your weekend? There's also a hint of moving on to another subject. So it's an excellent way for you to steer the conversation to another topic, moving on in a light and relaxed way, right? Wow, how old are you? Wow, your curiosity is interesting, but tell me, how was your weekend? It's already completely changed. The atmosphere has changed, the subject has changed, and the person has already realized that they were rude to you. If by any chance the person realizes that they were rude, when someone asks an inappropriate question and then says, sorry, I shouldn't have mentioned that, it's essential that you are courteous to this person. So don't dwell on it, right? Don't keep bringing up that topic. Wow, that's true. I don't like talking about that. It's completely out of line. Oh, why did you ask that kind of question? It doesn't make sense for you to bring up this topic. Let's just end it. Just answer, what is this? I get your curiosity, but I think we should discuss something else. Period. What is this? Don't worry, let's talk about something else. Tell me, how was your weekend? How are things going with you? All right, finished? Don't keep dwelling on the fact that the person asked you that question and that they were really out of line. And that she's really out of line and that she doesn't do anything. Right, that she has no filter when it comes to asking questions. She doesn't stay there, arguing with the person right in front of her? No. Especially because, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, these kinds of questions usually happen in more relaxed environments, right? In a social setting. So it's interesting to think that sometimes someone asks an inappropriate question and you also answer in a ruder way. That can ruin the atmosphere, ruin the party, drain the energy for you and for the other person, which is very negative. By the way, if you want to learn a little more about social etiquette, good manners, and good behavior, don't forget that I also have my etiquette and good manners training. And for you who are watching here with the YouTube coupon and haven't taken any training at my school yet, just type YouTube on your first purchase and you'll get a special discount. The link is here in the description of this video and I'll be waiting for you in our training. This training, by the way, has already been taken by thousands of people who want to understand more about etiquette, good manners, proper protocols, and who want to boost their personal image. Dealing with awkward questions is really delicate, and often we just don't know what to do. But even more important than knowing how to answer awkward questions is making sure we don't ask awkward questions ourselves. And that's why I've already made a video here on the channel with 12 questions you should never ask anyone. And I'll leave it here on the side for you to watch right after this. After all, now you already know how to answer, but how about understanding which questions should never be asked? I'll stop here. A hug and see you in the next video.